Okay, welcome. My name is Roland Dupre. I'm with East Hartford Public Library, and I'm here with Matthew Barnwell III. He has written a book. I don't think you can see this, can you? I'm on and off trying to do this. Every time I show one of these books, I get it and then it disappears. But this is Black Behind the Shield. And I have to say that it is such a remarkable story, but there are many, many stories that you have here, Matthew. And
Thank you.
it is, it really has made me stop and think and regard this problem that we have in this country with a deeper sense of who I am and who
hmm
other people are
hmm
and where people are coming from. Um, Matthew, for those of you who want to know, he's a former Connecticut State police officer and has worked in many towns, many communities, and
Yeah,
on many different levels.
right.
So, Matthew, you are amazing. Tell us more about how you collected these stories. How did it come to be?
Well, I mean, honestly, when I decided to write this book, I had zero idea of what stories I was going to tell. But I knew that whatever stories I did tell, they had to be insightful, meaningful, but most of all, they had to be interesting. When I sat down and kind of recollected on my life, trying to figure out, what stories I was going to write, each of the stories that are in my book kind of just stood out. They just popped into my head. And when I started thinking about those stories, I said, yeah, these are the stories that need to be in because I think these type of stories are, educational. I think these people will understand and learn, from those stories. And plus, I wanted to pick stories so that I could tell people like who I was and where I came from and honestly what made me, the person I am today.
And your revealing of yourself is seems it's so true, even when you're a child and you're responding to these very strange things that are happening to you, and then
Right.
your point of view is so genuine, and I feel that throughout the book and even here. And
Thank you.
um, I think that's one of the pieces that continues to kind of reverberate and resonate for me. But also, I think it showed all the stories show a lot of resilience, you know. I mean, being called the N word
Mm,
in many different aspects. I mean, there's not only one person that does this to you.
right, right.
You want to talk about that?
Yeah, I mean that's a great point. And I know people always hear the N word and how it affects people, but I can only speak to how, it affects me personally, because it affects others differently. The unfortunate part is I've learned how to accept it. We as people of color should never have to accept it. I just choose to do so. You know, when it first happened to me, I was in shock. I was confused. I was angry. It was tough to hear, but like I said, the unfortunate part is it became easier the more I heard it. The fact that, I was called it more than once is unacceptable for anybody. But I've come to realize that it's, part of life and that some people are just, I don't know if I should use this word, but it was just simply ignorant. When I was little, I would cry sometimes, and my mom would say, you know, come on, you can't cry any louder than that. You can't make any more noise than that. And so I got so confused that I stopped crying because she wanted me to cry more. So when people use the N word and you tell them, you know, come on, you can't insult me more than that. You can do better than that. Isn't there something else you can tell me? you'd be surprised how many grown-ups would go, huh? Wait, what? Wait, what did I call you? And you kind of beat them at their own game, you know? So, I mean, there's a line that I use a lot, and it is what it is. Life is simply, too short to worry about, people like that. My mom taught me that. And she also taught me, you know, not to hate racists and people like that, but to kind of feel sorry for them because they're missing out on someone who can be very important, in their life. And so, that's the way I try to carry each day, just kind of living it and let people be who they are. Because one thing I've learned is you'll never change people. You might be able to educate them and make them more aware, but they're going to be who they are.
Yeah, you can't change people. That's a very good lesson. And
Yeah.
yet you yourself have changed because of this experience, because of how people's attitudes and reactions to you have sort of bounced off you in some ways and penetrated in some ways, haven't it?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's funny because I think the more it's just like anything. And I can always use golf as an example because that's what I play. But when you first start off, you're not that good. But then the more and more that you play, you become better. Well, in a reverse effect, when people start treating you negatively or calling you this or calling you that, the more you hear it, then the more you get used to it, and it's the easier it is to deflect what they're saying, if that makes any sense. And I'm not saying that it's right or wrong, but if you kind of live your life worrying about what this person is saying or what that person's saying, you're just wasting your time. I mean, that's just the way I look at it. So it has helped me become thicker skinned. It has helped me understand people more. So maybe it's not the way I wanted to go about it, but the same effect has come. So I'm happy for it. It made me a better person, I
You
think.
know, I it reminds me of this poem, came out in the 80s. I think the poet is Kate Rushdie, if I'm not she's a poet in Connecticut. She lives in,
Okay.
and it's called The Bridge. And she's African American, and she was really tired of
Mm-hmm.
educating people about how to treat her. So
Mm,
this being the bridge, being the one that is the friend to the white person who doesn't understand, that this is insulting or the whatever.
right. Right.
Do
Right.
you feel like you're the bridge? Do you ever get tired of educating people?
No. My mom is an educator and she doesn't get tired of educating people. So why should I? I mean, I find you actually, believe it or not, you kind of take pride in when you show someone how to do something or you tell someone how to do something and they get it, it makes you feel good. And it's kind of like when I was working and I would help someone. I remember trying to go to the movies. And that's when, you take your cruiser home and some lady was broken down the highway. Well, I stopped, changed her tire for her, and got her off the highway, and I missed my movie. But I tell you that because she looked at me and she says, "Thank you." And that meant more to me than anything else, any monetary thing that I could have gotten. So when you teach someone something or you help someone and they truly either get it or accept it, then I could do that for the rest of my life. That's a no-brainer.
Yeah, it makes you feel good.
It does.
Feel
It
good.
does. It really
And not
does.
only that, but you are setting an example. I mean, as a state trooper, helping somebody change your tire. I mean, that reverberates throughout the whole system, doesn't it? Because
Yeah.
every state policeman will have that to sort of live up to or to, compare
You
to.
would think.
You
You
would
would think. but I know some who just don't care. Unfortunately, you know.
Oh, there's some that won't change my tire.
Oh yeah, no, no. There's some that won't give you a tissue to sneeze. I trust me, I know.
And that comes down back to this tight issue, this story of
Hmm.
you being the state policeman in in a system where there are racists and there are people treating you badly within your own world of state police. It's not only the citizenry. And
Right.
so can you speak to that a bit? I mean, there's some great tales in this book.
You mean speak to
The
exact
people, the your colleagues that are that may show racism toward you.
wow. I mean, it kind of goes back to what I was saying before about, just being who you are and that people are going to be who they are. When you deal with your own colleagues who they might not come out and say they're racist because not many people do, but when you perceive it, believe it, or you think it, you know what they're about. Because my mom always said, when they show you who they are, believe them. And so I believe them and I know who they are and I just keep it moving. But one thing about being um, a police officer, and it doesn't matter if it's state, federal, local, the way you feel about a certain person is one thing. But one thing I will say is that most police officers, when the stuff hits the fan, color goes out the window, personal feelings go out the window, and they do what they have to do to get the job done. And they might not like you. I mean, there was people that I work with that I didn't like. And it was personal reason, not because of what they looked like. It was just because of the way they treated me and treated others. But I knew that if something were to happen, that wouldn't be an issue. And I knew that they didn't like me for whatever reason, but I knew that if I needed their help physically, that they wouldn't just stand there and go, I didn't like them. They would do what they had to do. They might not talk to you the next day, but they would help you. So I took comfort in the fact that I knew that if my life was on the line, they would be there. Because if I had to worry about that, then I'd be in the wrong job.
Yeah, that's pretty amazing, that profession, because
Mm,
there's such danger. It can happen anytime. It's so
absolutely.
stressful.
Mm,
And it's good to know that there are priorities higher than these personal feelings. And you discuss that a little bit in your book about the power
mm.
of being, this state policeman, right?
Oh yeah. Yeah. And it's very, when I say power, it's very, very powerful. I have a cousin who actually is in the State Police Academy as we speak. He graduates in December. And, I try to and will continue to school him on things that he should do, shouldn't do, what to expect, what not to expect. And this power that I talk about is, I mean, I fell, you know, I fell into that same type of power when I graduated. I felt like, oh my God, I'm Superman. I was like a black Superman. I could do whatever I wanted to do. I could stop you. I could do this. I could do that. It was great. But then I realized once I got off that quote unquote high, I realized that it's just a job. And I know when I say it's just a job, people are like, no, it's not just a job. It's a different job. But no, you have a job to do, just like a doctor has a job, just like a teacher has a job. And you have to keep it in perspective. And that's the hard part because being a police officer is such a high profile job that you kind of put it in the wrong person's hands and they can just run wild with it. And it's really, really tough. So that's why I thought that chapter in particular was very important because I wanted people to understand that, you know, with, as they would say in Superman, with power comes great responsibility. It's the truth. You do have a lot of responsibility with the things that you do because there's no take backsies, if you will. When you do something, it's done and you have to live with the consequences. When I was shooting at the academy, our instructor used to always say, you're responsible for wherever that bullet goes. You can't take it back. So, you can't take things back. You gotta be smart.
Yeah, this book is remarkable because those stories of uh I mean, these anecdotes about dealing with whatever comes around is amazing. The
Hmm.
different things that happened to you, both as you were undercover for a little
Yep.
while.
Yes, I was.
I mean, um, it's really, there's so many adventures. It could be a movie. It's really something. So yeah,
Yeah,
and
it could be.
undercover, I mean, that was a whole other thing with, because we expect the expectations of being a Black person buying
Right,
drugs, right? Yeah.
right. Yeah.
So
It was definitely interesting though. It
yeah.
definitely was interesting. And it was fun at some points. There were certain things that were fun, there were certain things that weren't fun, but I think for me that opened up a whole different side of me. You know what I mean? Like being a police officer, being a state trooper, you're a robot, do this, do that, whatever. But when you become an undercover police officer, you kind of get to be other people. You kind of get to be someone that you never thought you might be. And I thought it was phenomenal. It really was. I mean, it took a toll on me, um, to say the least, but it was something that I'm glad I'm not doing anymore, but I'm glad that it was part of my life.
Well, yeah, I think at one point the reality hit you that you could have been killed and your daughter would not have been able to have a father. And
Right.
I mean,
Yeah.
that's scary when you think
It's
about
when even when you say it now and I think about it, it gies me goosebumps because, you know, I think people who know me, and I'm sure Franz can attest to this, is that, my kids are probably the most important thing that I've ever been a part of. And so for something to happen to me, I mean, maybe I'm selfish, but I want to be there when, they walk down the aisle. I want to be there when they have kids. I want to be there if they say, hey, you know what? I got a question. I want to be there for that. But I also want to be there for them if they need advice. My mom, I won't tell you how old I am, but my mom, says it doesn't matter how old you get. I'm gonna still give you advice. It's up to you to take it or not, but I'm gonna give you advice. And I always appreciate that because believe it or not, her advice has always been spot on, but sometimes I'm stubborn and I'm like, no, whatever. But then when I hang up the phone, I'm like, yeah, you're right. Okay. So, you know, I don't, knock on wood, I don't plan on going anywhere for a long time. So,
it. I have to say that your mother is in the audience here, right? So
yeah, yeah.
so it's you're praising the audience. Yeah.
Oh, well, I have to, I know,
I
you
have to
know,
say that mothers, and my mother is the same. I still quote from advice she gave me, and I think there's something about mothers that it's really important. They're our first teachers.
yeah, they are.
We
And they
learn how
continue
to
to be
teach.
there. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
So it's really great. We're sort of at the end of the interview about your book, but if there's anything else, I mean, do you want to read from your book or tell one of the stories? Is there something that you would like to share some more?
No, well, I won't, I'm not gonna um read from the book because if you want to know what's in the book, you gotta go get it. You know what I mean? But uh exactly. But no, one thing I will say is that being a police officer, being a black police officer, being a family man, it it's it's tough. It was, and I'm not going to sit here and say woe is me and that I had it bad and this, that, and the other because everyone had it just as bad. But for me, being a police officer and having a family, I really, and I know I mentioned this in my book, but I really try to separate the two. And for those who can't separate the two, they find themselves without a family, without kids to talk to, without friends, because they can't separate the two. And I was fortunate enough to have people around me to help me separate that, to help me, keep me grounded, if you will, to, have a job. But when I came back from that job, it wasn't, okay, I'm still working. It's no, what am I going to do for the family? What are we going to do together? What are we going to do? And excuse me. So I will always, 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 regardless of how the job went, be appreciative for that because it enabled me to, I think, become a better human, at least a better human being, at least in my eyes. I thought I had. That's for everyone else to decide. But for me, I thought it made me a better person and it helped me understand people more than I had already known how to do. So for that, I will always be grateful for the state police.
That's great. Thank you so much, Matthew. I'm going to end the recording, but I hope we can keep talking. Okay.
Absolutely. I'm not going anywhere.
Um, I'm going to stop. It's